I can sort of explain what George Bush and his partners did now. They used an Israeli whose initials were MK, and they hired hitmen to attack and torture me and leave me so neurologically traumatized that I struggle to understand how to remodel my presentation of self during the complicated processes of self-image development that come along when you're 14, 15 years old. Was shocking. A lot of people must have known what they were doing because it was obviously visible. Yet I was alone. And the doctrine of the outlaw oligarchs working with the KGB and CIA through Hollywood, the master planner, was to say, well, Curry's associated with a status symbol with an important person. So let's see him struggle to become important. And they smushed the idea of this liberation movement of free speech when I was like 8 years old. You know, there were Michael Reagan's favorite scene was when I was 9. And freedom of conscience, meaning freedom of speech, the blasphemies of John Lennon, and the free speech movements, and put all that into overdrive and say it's Howard Stern's satire. Okay. Trigger the neuroplasm as an enemy within and watch the liberal self destruct and call it an exorcism. Well, they escalated through, people would argue that secret taping, when illegal, can sometimes be justified by what it produces. But the victim of secret taping wonders who's responsible, who's doing the taping, what happens if I give them what they want so I can find out the answer. And the escalation at NASA with Penis Gabriel went through to brain beaming sonar. Now, an evil idiot would say I tried to make myself more important than I am. I didn't. I editorialized. My idea of editorializing is to promote debate, discussion, and assuming that there were people in charge who were not criminally insane, they might perceive something worthwhile that contributed to their understanding. Now, all of this gets cast derisively as proof that the quietist doesn't want to be a knight of resignation in the field of battle or something. Because, well, they've been setting this up for a long time. I was in Montana when John Tower said that bringing down the Berlin Wall would make Russia ever more menacing. I mean, how can anybody say that intelligently at a time of reform? You know, if Martin Luther King would have been alive, could you imagine what he would have said when the Berlin Wall came down? Now, I'm not guilty of grandstanding. I'm not saying Betsy Irene will jump down, hold PPE. Oh, he's grandstanding. He wants to be Martin Luther King. All this stuff that comes out of Pittsburgh. I'm not grandstanding. I don't want to be Martin Luther King. What I wanted to say was, can you imagine what would have been said when the Berlin Wall came down if Martin Luther King were alive at the time? That's all. It's not making myself the walrus, for God's sakes. But what Bush and McCartney worked out was make him believe that the spirit of John Lennon was the good guy and freedom of speech is a liberty that you're entitled to. And we'll escalate to a point where we detect or implant neurologically. I mean, it's a bizarre crusade by the rural community to defile American human rights, civil rights, Bill of Rights activism, and enslave the very idea of a deaf person being allowed to be a student, you know, of a painter. I mean, it's deranged, and the fact that the people behind um, the first so-called free speech movement, who argued for free speech liberties and would do it, shows that it was a process of liberating into slavery. It was Orwellianism all along. I mean, I can sort of explain what they did. I don't think the U.S. Navy has dignified itself by watching these heavyweights come brutalizing a 10-year-old. I don't think that it stands out as a fine hour for the Bushes.